Bryce, I'll turn it over to you.
Let's have a quick introduction. Today our program is going to be led by Amy Tracewell and Howard Sullivan, our co-chairs of our DEI committee, talking about our survey that we did.
Thank you, Bryce. I think Howard was going to start with a couple of remarks.
Yeah, so thanks, Bryce, for the thing. I just want to touch on a couple things. The DEI committee met numerous times over the past couple weeks. We developed a survey of which 44 people took it. So we feel very good on that. I do want to extend a big thank you to John Hausinger because he compiled all of the information. And a special thank you to his wife, who helped us tremendously when we were putting together the survey to make sure that it had balance and it did what we wanted it to do. We'll be going over the results with you. If you have any questions, you can raise those questions. And I'm going to turn that over to Amy.
Okay, and I might have to get up in a second because I have a scritchy dog really quick who's scritching at the door. So hang on. Okay, you guys. All right, I'll let him come and go as he pleases. All right, so thank you for the introduction. And of course, yes, thank you to John and his wife for all the compiling work that's been done. As you all know, we formed a subcommittee, a little committee to kind of get together to look at how we wanted to respond to some of the social justice unrest that we were seeing nationally, but also, you know, as a club and in our community. This group met to kind of help us try to think about what role we might play as a club. And so, as Howard mentioned, we met several times. And one of the first things we decided that we needed to do is we needed to establish a baseline. We need to kind of understand where we were collectively at as a group. And so we decided to make this survey. And the idea behind all this is we want to come at this from a standpoint of education, self-education. So we want to learn as much as we can, and we want to be able to expose members to opportunities to increase their personal education around social justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, and what that means in the context of Rotary, but also in the context of your personal lives and in your workplaces and in the nation and in the world. Rotary is an international service organization, and sometimes it's easy to lose track of that because many of us are really devoted to our club and the work that we do in community. But, you know, and I know that a lot of us remember that it's international as well, but I just wanted to call out that, you know, Rotary represents many different cultures and many different areas across the world. And so our attempt, again, is just to kind of figure out where we are. And then so I want to share that with you, share our findings. And then what we plan to do as a committee is we plan to meet again next week and continually. We've been meeting pretty much weekly. We took a little break as the survey was out, and our intent then is to, you know, talk about what kinds of questions emerge after this discussion, and kind of formulate a recommendation back to the board around ways in which we might support education around this area in our club. So are there any questions about that, the context of that? Or, okay, and so then I'll keep the chat up too. If people have questions, I'll try to be mindful as I go, just to take us through this information, and I'll try to be responsive. So feel free to interrupt. I'm gonna share my screen. So let's see, screen 3. Does that say Forest Grove Rotary Club diversity? Okay, all right. Just want to make sure it doesn't show my other screens. There's nothing weird on them though. Okay, so as you can see, we have 44 responses, and it looks like the chat has gone. So, you know, if there's questions, you can interrupt me, or we'll take them at the end. So then the first question here, this pie chart, is a representation of, you know, the question was, how many years have you been a Rotarian? So I think it's of note here that we have one, going back to my notes here, we have one response, one person that like, well, didn't want to answer that one. And we can see that 30 plus, there's 27.9% of our members that have been Rotarians for 30 plus years. So if you take from, 5 to 10 years and beyond, that's quite a number, 66%, let's see, that's quite a big number, excuse me, of people who've been with our club for quite a bit. 25.6 is 5 to 10 years. The next biggest is 3 to 5, and then we have 1 to 3. So we have in this area, quite a bit of our club is new, and it's weighted a little bit towards the new, right? And then we have this large group of people who've been with us for a long time. So that's interesting and commendable, I think. Looks like a good distribution of members coming in, with a little 7% here. Next question. Hang on. Next question is what is your profession? And this is a function. This graph is not very informative in this format here. John sent me a separate file that indicates, we have quite a range of different types of people employed with us, but we have collectively some of the categories that stick out. We have 11 people in insurance, which is like, and then the other categories we had maybe 2 to 4, and that's different types of insurance, right? Of course. So it's interesting. Here is the highest level of education. As you can see, 48.8% of our members have a bachelor's degree. Then the next is 25.6 have a master's degree, and then a doctoral. So Howard made a comment like, if some of you have a doctorate and you want us to call you doctor, let us know. I want to call you doctor because you've earned it. So so that's quite an interesting spread. It looks like the majority of our members have an advanced degree of some kind. And so when we talk about diversity, that's also an interesting thing to note. Like, what does that say like about us as a club that most of our members have those advanced degrees? So we could try to balance some of that out by specifically targeting new growth, membership growth in areas where people don't have degrees, perhaps trades, although those have certificates, but so we could do some balancing there if we so choose. Next in the age category, 66.7% of us are 51 and older. 41 through 50 category, 16.7. So, we're skew older, and we knew that, right? So then also here on the race side, I'm going to get the dog again. Hang on. You can see we're fairly Caucasian. Fairly is a, it's really probably not a good descriptor here. We're very Caucasian. 90.7% of us identify as Caucasian. And I would say that's just, that's not a surprise, I think. And then no one responded to multiple races, or one response, sorry. So then here's what gender do you identify with? Again, 55.8% of us are male, and then 41% identify as female. So that's not a terrible distribution in terms of male and female. And then we have some diversity in our gender, and some people have identified as genderqueer or non-binary, which I think is super. That represents some diversity, and that's nice to see. It's also nice to see that it's not, that it's fairly balanced within male and female, with skewing a little bit towards male. Again, these are all categories of diversity, opportunities for diversity. What is your sexual orientation? Most of us identify as heterosexual. We have some people who identify as homosexual, some asexual, and some bisexual individuals. Again, nice to see some diversity pop up in this area. Now we get to some of the things that are not as rigid in terms of how people answer. I feel included and respected within the club was the question. And you can see here that 43.2% of individuals agreed with that. An additional 38.6 strongly agreed with that. So this is the pie chart of people that have agreed. And then we have an 11.4% who strongly disagree. And then smaller numbers here on the disagree and neutral. So while I would say this, if we were being tested on this, this number here is an A, right? In many ways, it's this number 11.4 and here that I think as a club, we want to have this be our baseline. We want that to get smaller because we don't want anyone to feel not included and not respected. So I think this is a great win though, because many feel included. I just want to acknowledge that the purpose of something like this is to retest us next year or within a certain time frame and work to see these numbers grow smaller, or that area of the pie grow smaller. So I often worry I do not have things in common with others in the club. So you'll see us, so most people disagree with that statement. Disagree and strongly disagree are the large percentage. And then 11.4% similar to up here. So these might be correlated. I feel respected and included might be related to somehow worrying that we don't have things in common with each other. So I think that's just something of note. We really can't tell, so that's a guess, right? But it's interesting. The committee, when we were looking at this, called that out. I am comfortable talking about my background and cultural experiences with my fellow Rotarians. 46.5% agreed with that. 30.2 strongly agreed. So we see a similar sort of pie chart as above, with the neutral category getting a little bit bigger. Like, okay, so there's some people who can't really answer that either way. And then strongly disagree and strongly agree are here. So I don't know what it means. This is something for us to think about when the neutral category gets bigger, because you'll see it get bigger in other areas. I think it just means maybe that the question was somewhat vague, right? Because you could talk about, well, what kinds of things in your background, what kinds of cultural experiences. So just note that as well. Moving into, have you ever felt marginalized in any way during your time with Rotary? We have 77.3% of people saying no, which is super. And we have 15.9%, and the little extra pie chart here for the mathematicians to figure out what that number is, saying maybe. So again, this is something for us to watch and to try to build programs and processes in place so that we can decrease that, that wedge, if you will. It looks like, it reminds me of, what's that game where you go around and you answer questions and you get a pie wedge? What was that game? I can't remember. All right, so if you're comfortable, please share any marginalized experiences. So this is the long answers for this question. So it was like, have you ever felt marginalized? And then we asked people to explain that. So this is just a snippet of some of those explanations. There's more in a Word document, but this is all that would fit in this reporting form. So then I felt that inappropriate behavior towards women has been tolerated. There's been pushback at times to myself being female. However, most of those folks that caused those issues have left the club now. I've witnessed blatant sexualization of a female guest and indicated as such to leadership at the time. My perception was that nothing was done with the club member, and no one got back to me. It seems to me that being on the board is too much of a popularity contest. I would like to have been on the board and participated more in that way, but never was selected. I think that some rotation system involving those people who express an interest could be a better way of selecting board members. And I was told I couldn't participate in a committee because, quote, they already worked well together, end quote. So again, there's some more answers to there, but that gives you a good sense of kind of how people responded when they disagreed to that previous question. Then here we get to our question was, our club is committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion. 59.1% agreed with that. And then strongly agreed was another 13.6%. And then we had, this is where we see the neutral category kind of growing. So 20.5% were unsure. And that might, again, be part of the design of the question. Like, what does it mean? What does it look like when a club is committed to equity, diversity, equity, and inclusion? And so not knowing what that might be creates some uncertainty in the answer potentially. So then our club is a leader for equity, diversity, equity, inclusion in our community. Here's where we see like, okay, the neutral is the biggest category. So that, to me, that seems neutral. It's neutral. So I want to imply that it's negative, but it's indeed neutral. So 34.1% agreed and then 11.4 strongly agreed. And then 15.9% did not agree. So again, this is information, and this is not like judgment for any of us. This is sort of like baseline. Now we know the answer to these questions. Now, depending on what we do and what we implement, we'll re-poll people and see if these categories and these numbers have changed. And that would be the aim of using this kind of survey. Okay, moving to my experience since joining Rotary has led me to become more understanding of the value of diversity. 52.3% agreed, or sorry, were neutral. And then 27.3 agreed, 15.9 strongly agreed, and then there's some strongly disagree and disagree. So I think that's just something that we need to open up. It's like, why is there so much, no one could answer that. So that just means we have more work to do, I believe. Discriminatory jokes are not tolerated. 50% said, heck no, they're not. 15.9% were even more vehemently saying that no, they're not tolerated. However, 22.7% of people thought maybe they are, and 11.4% think that they are tolerated in our club. So again, we'll have to work on our jokes, myself included, maybe. I believe the club will take appropriate action in response to incidents of discrimination. 53.5% agreed, 9.3% strongly agreed, a larger portion of maybe again, and then a disagree and strongly disagree. And we talked about what that might look like, how we might address something like this. And maybe it's something as seemingly simple as outlining an appropriate course of action. Maybe people are just not clear of the appropriate course of action in response to incidents of discrimination. So that was kind of a discussion point for the committee. Members of different background are encouraged to apply. For leadership, 54.5% said yep, with an additional 34.1% saying heck yep, and 11.4% were unsure and neutral. So I think that's that's nice. That's a great sort of distribution, I would say. The club has done a good job providing programs that promote equity, diversity, equity, inclusion. Neutral 34%, agree 40.9%, strongly agree 11.4%, and then disagree 13.6%. So we see that there's some members of our club who probably think we could do more programming in that area, or different types of programming to get at diversity, equity, inclusion. Or maybe what's in this question is maybe it's not clear when programs do have the diversity, equity, inclusion lens to them, and what that might mean, what that looks like, if it's not explicitly about diversity, equity, inclusion. And then what could be done to positively impact and increase diversity? This is again a snippet of some answers. Have more programs and training than recruit, open up committees for new ideas and involvement for new members. More reach out to minority and women-owned businesses, nurture new and prospective members accordingly. We have very few Latino club members, especially given the local demographics. Rotary is not about race, religion, or sex. Don't make it be. We are about service to our community, regardless of the aforementioned. Keep doing what we have been doing, more goals and metrics around outreach to specific areas of our community, scholarships for those who can't pay and then not sure. How would the community at large describe our club? This gets to the branding that Janine was talking about. Looks like, again, there's more questions, there's more answers underneath this, but they're similar to what you see here. Old white male, a group of old white men, not sure, the club of choice, rich white people doing good things, service to community, a club that has members who are helping make Forest Grove a better community, conservative white upper class movers and shakers men, not sure. And so this is perception. This is what we believe is the perception of Rotary. And so we can change perception once we know it, right? Please include additional information or anything you feel was missed that would be helpful. We could show our commitment to DEI in our holiday float, but maybe for 2022, 2021. Highlight the excellent impact on the inclusion of women in Rotary and notably in ours. My feelings are we are very accepting of others, do a better job in letting people know what we are doing to make Forest Grove a better community. Good survey. My neutral answers are an indication of not knowing the answer since I'm new to the group, so that's interesting. I think our club's reputation could be improved by educating the community about the diversity of our members. Continue to develop membership from all represented DEI communities. Again, there's more here And then we had beavers or ducks, looks like, sorry, beavers win. Not sorry, sorry, not sorry. But then there's some both, and then there's some ducks. So, and then there's a whole bunch of other things. So that was kind of a fun answer at the end to bring some levity to the questionnaire. So with that, I will stop, and I'll stop sharing my screen unless folks have a specific question. I can go back, and then the committee is available for questions. Janine.
Now that we have done the survey, what's the next steps for the club? Is it to embrace this committee and the findings, and the club make a decision about where it wants to go? Does the committee make that choice and bring it to the board? What's the process from this point?
Thank you. What we were imagining is we were going to present today our raw findings, and then we're planning on meeting next week at our usual time at noon on Tuesday, and anyone is welcome to join. Let me know, send me an email if you'd like the Zoom link. And we're going to talk about it as a committee. Initially, our thought was that we would provide a summary of the survey and the survey with the raw data to the board, with some recommendations for the board to consider around moving some of these metrics forward. And so then having the board can decide how they want to move forward in terms of engaging the club or implementing some of them. And so we're just going to make some recommendations to the board.
I have a comment.
Yeah, Virginia.
So it's interesting. My Habitat board, we had a guest speaker this morning, Cheryl Roberts from the African American Alliance for Home Ownership. And she, of course, our Habitat for Humanity board has also been interested in being better in terms of DEI. And so we asked Cheryl for some recommendations on that. Cheryl happens to be a person of color who lives in Portland and runs a large, very successful nonprofit organization there. And one of the things that she said to us is that, you know, everybody is looking at the world through a DEI lens right now with heightened awareness of some of the issues. And one of the things that she suggested was that rather than each of us kind of working in our own little pocket, so Habitat's over here doing this, the city government's over here doing that, the Rotary Club's over here doing this, you know, different little groups, that, you know, it might make sense to do something that's community-wide, because you can't fix the community. Like the Rotary Club can't fix the community dynamics, and the Rotary Club can only fix the Rotary Club, and Habitat can only fix Habitat. And so I just wanted to put that out there as a suggestion or something that we might think about. I know that there is a citywide, and maybe somebody else on this call knows more about it, DEI task force. I know Lois Hornberger is on it. She also happens to be on my Habitat board. But maybe there are some places where we can work together across agency to really think about how we can reach out as a community and you know, address some of these issues, and not just in little silos. Just a thought.
Thank you, Virginia. There is an effort, as you're talking about, it's morphing into a social justice education project. Lois is indeed involved in that, and it's members of the city, the library, and their outreach arm around adult education, and some loose connections to the council, and also some faculty and administration at Pacific. So as that takes shape, I'll bring that to the committee also through us and to the club to determine kind of, you know, what role do we want to play as Rotarians in the greater community conversation. I think that's very salient, and I appreciate your comments and the work that you're doing from your organization. Thank you. Others? Blake.
So just talking about perception, and a lot of what was said in the comments, perception is is right on with the general perception of Rotary worldwide, is that it's a club of older men who, and in some cases you hear the term a check writing club, that there are clubs that just write checks. And I think those of us who are within the club know that a lot of that doesn't fit us. We are getting more diverse. We have a long way to go, but part of that too, and I'm looking at this from the eye of the person who runs the social media accounts for the club. We put a lot of content out there, but what I find is that even our own members, by and large, don't even look at that content or find ways to share about what Rotary is really all about to their network of people in social media. And I think one way that we can advance the idea of letting other people in the community know, not in our Rotary bubble, but in our other bubbles, is to do a better job of sharing, whether it's on social media or in conversations with others. And Claudia is a great example of how this can be done. Just sharing what our club is all about and what Rotary is all about, so that we can educate more people, number one, on what our club is doing, not only in the community, but what Rotary does in the world. But secondly, is a way to be able to bring more people into the club to do more. And maybe that's a way that we can reach out to more younger people, to more diverse backgrounds. I would love to see more, Latinos in the club, because that would certainly have a better mirror of what our population is. But I think we can do more as members of sharing that message and promoting what we're doing in the club through our social media channels. And I'm going to try to come up with some ways that we can share more about the why of Rotary and why you should be involved, that we can put out there in front of the community over the next few weeks.
Thank you, Blake. Your tireless work in that area does not go unnoticed. I appreciate what you're saying, and it can feel kind of like a lonely space if your posts don't get a lot of engagement. So I appreciate the comment, and I agree. Any others? So I'll look for hands still. So just note that this is information. This is for us to own, and for us to think about ways in which we grow as a club. Janine's point too, once again, is growth. But we can have, just like in our cities, we can have growth that we're intentional about. And I think this is an opportunity for us to really be honest with ourselves and with our community and with our club around who we are and who we want to be, and work towards that. And so I'm really honored to be a part of this committee and to help bring these conversations to our club. And I want you to know that I recognize that this can be a polarizing issue as well. And our intent is not to point fingers. It's not to hold judgment amongst ourselves and our members. It's to educate and to get to know each other better, and to understand our differences and embrace our differences for the good of our community and ourselves. So with that, it feels like a final statement. I will go to mute and pass it back to Julia.
Thank you, Amy. And thank you to the entire DEI committee for putting that survey together and, to share the results with us. I do think it's important that we need to know where we're at, and then set those goals as to where we want to be, so we can start working toward that. So this will be a good baseline for, I think, a future survey to say, now that we've been talking about it, now that we've been consciously and intentionally aware of how people are feeling, that hopefully we can show some improvements in those survey results going forward.